Hey everyone, this is Claire Parsons from the Brilliant Legal Mind blog, and we are trying something new this week. We are trying one of our first ever video blog series. So I have with me Talar Heculian Coursey, and if I said her name wrong, I'm sorry. She's a good friend of mine from LinkedIn, and I am debunking myths this month on the blog. And so one of the myths that I wanted to debunk in this series is to talk about the idea that what happens when you come across a meditation teacher you maybe don't care for that much. If you saw a few weeks ago, I did a post about Kendrick Lamar's new album and mental health. And in that album, Kendrick Lamar name drops Eckhart Tolle quite a bit. Eckhart Tolle had been on my reading list for a long time, and when Kendrick Lamar, mentioned him so much, I was kind of intrigued. So I listened to The Power of Now, and my honest opinion is it wasn't amazing to me. I didn't think it was bad. I didn't think he said anything wrong, but it just didn't speak to me. But my friend Talar loves Eckhart Tolle, and so I wanted to have her here to talk about why, just to sort of point out that maybe you don't like a meditation teacher, but maybe somebody else does, and that there's a lot of different opinions out there about meditation teachers and what works. So we can talk about this. So Talar, can you first of all give me just an overview, a quick snapshot of who you are?
Hi, Claire. I am a wife, a mom to 4 kids, a dog mom, general counsel for an auto dealership during the day, children's book author at night, and now a new life coach with my certification pending, among other things.
Yep. Congratulations on that. I just saw that. So that's amazing. Talar, I know in addition to all of those things, you have been certified to teach yoga, and I know you do have an interest in mindfulness. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Definitely. My first introduction to mindfulness was through yoga. And I used to refer to it as my moving meditation. And while I do meditate, I use the Calm app, and I try to meditate at least 10 minutes every day through the daily 10-minute meditation. I am not very consistent. I do enjoy it, but not as much as yoga. So for me, the mindfulness practice of yoga that includes not just both, mind, body, and breath, the connection is what really works for me and what I look forward to doing, as opposed to sitting down to meditate, which, confession, even when I do my 10-minute meditations, I do it lying down. I know she tells you straight back, sit up, stay alert. I don't do it. I don't follow those instructions, but it works for me.
And yeah, I usually sit up because I don't want to fall asleep, but I sometimes lay down to meditate, and it's generally okay to find a posture that works for you. She's probably just telling you to try to be alert on that app, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. So I asked you here to talk about Eckhart Tolle, and I know at some point on LinkedIn, like you had like Eckhart Tolle, like fangirl or devotee or something on your LinkedIn profile. So what is it about Eckhart Tolle that you like so much?
It's groupie. I am a self-proclaimed Eckhart Tolle groupie. I don't think that groupies are just for musical bands. I think that authors can have them too, and I'm one of his. I would like to think I'm his number one groupie. It's really hard to say. It's kind of like obscenity, when you see it, and I guess for Eckhart Tolle, it's when you listen to it or when you read it. And it's funny you mentioned that, you're not a fan. My first introduction to Eckhart Tolle was actually in Dan Harris's book, 10% Happier. I don't know if you've read that or if you're familiar with Dan Harris. And he wasn't a fan either, but I went down that rabbit hole and actually started with listening to Oprah Winfrey's interview with Eckhart Tolle. She did, I think it was a 10-part series, one podcast episode per chapter where she interviewed Eckhart. So I listened to that before I read the book. And I don't know if perhaps that helped me get, more comfortable with the book. But I have the book in print. I have multiple copies that I gift to people, whether they want it or not. Some people return that gift. It does happen because he's not for everyone. It's kind of like caviar. I don't like caviar, but apparently some people do. I also have The Power of Now and A New Earth on audio. And so I like going to various chapters on the audio when I'm taking a walk and need to recenter myself. The way that he explains concepts and what he talks about really works for me. And specifically, this concept of us being the watcher of the ego, for me, when I am trying to practice mindfulness, and not just because I'm trying to meditate or do yoga, really in interpersonal relationships and conflicts, even in communications on LinkedIn. After reading Eckhart's work, I will literally take a step back and watch my ego. My ego might want to trash talk and complain and argue, but I will take a step back to watch my ego and recognize that it's my ego that's having that reaction. And in my opinion, I think most of the time when we are reactive, that is the ego at work, as opposed to your, mindful true self. I can't remember the question, but hopefully somewhere in there I answered it.
I think you did. You might have gotten into some of my later questions too, but no worries, I can adjust. So one of the things that, when you talked about this, I think the thing that I like about Eckhart Tolle was the fact that I think he does explain concepts with a lot of clarity. The thing about his story that I think is the hardest for me is that in everything that I've learned about meditation and Buddhism, the enlightenment piece is the thing I struggle with most. Like, I can't necessarily conceive of it. I've read about it and I understand like what in general it means, but I think his story is the hard part for me to understand how that just happens. And so I think he doesn't get into the method as much, like how to actually do these things. He talks about concepts, but he doesn't as much explain how to do it. He does get into meditation a little bit. I do like that he talks about the importance of the body in meditation, because I agree that that is very central. But that's the piece that I have a disconnect with. He tells me what the goal is, and he explains it very clearly. He doesn't as much tell me how to get there. So when you say that you can watch yourself and your ego because you listen to him, can you connect those dots for me at all? Like, in a practical way, how has his work helped you do that?
It's hard to explain. And I don't disagree with you. I don't know that his work, I don't necessarily think of it as a, handbook guide for how to meditate and how to go about life. I think of it as more conceptual. And that, if you want to really hone in your mindfulness practice, you need to go deeper. You need to, subscribe to your blog and listen to people like you to get the how. I don't think he necessarily talks about how. I think he's just painting the picture of where you can get to. And, it's interesting. I'm going to go to something else you just said about the enlightenment piece. So in addition to being an Eckhart groupie, I'm also a Jesus groupie. And one of the things that I like about the way Eckhart describes his concepts, he does pull in these great teachers, including Jesus, including Buddha and Muhammad and all these other people. And his point is, these concepts already exist in beliefs that you may already have. You don't have to choose one or the other. They're not mutually exclusive. And I feel like he describes it in different ways that different members of the audience might be able to understand it. And for me, as a Jesus groupie, his reference to the Holy Spirit resonates with me in terms of enlightenment. So that's what, my goal, nirvana, enlightenment that I'm trying to get to is access the Holy Spirit within me and stay true to that rather than the ego of my human form. And for some people, who don't follow Jesus, that maybe something else will. But I don't think I'm fooling myself. I have had these moments where I feel like I'm back there. I'm literally having this out of body experience. And when I say back there, because I feel like I consider, the ego being the outer shell of my body, not necessarily just in physical form, but the, the animal part of me. And when I think about having my out of body experience or tapping into the Holy Spirit, I literally envision myself stepping back. You know what I mean? And watching this other person that happens to be me having this human experience. And that's what I think that's one of the other things he says is he describes us as the spirit having a human experience, and I don't know, for me, I really enjoy the kinds of visuals that he represents, and especially as it relates to how much emphasis he puts on connection of all of us, that we are all connected by one spirit, one energy, and each one of us is just having a human experience of that energy. So I like that concept, and because I do believe that we are all connected, and I think it's just not just in our own personal best interests to support that connection, but also for the greater good as well.
So you got a little mystical on me there, and I'm not necessarily I don't think that's bad or unimportant, because I think those pieces of life matter a lot, but in practical terms, because honestly, the reason I love meditation so much is because it's practical and it's useful. So, for our readers who are lawyers and professionals, I mean, what are the practical things that his teachings have helped you, do in your life? What are the practical benefits? And you can just list them if it's easier.
Well, I think it just comes down to one general term, and it's avoiding being reactive, and I think that's a part of the goal in meditation and mindfulness, is to be able to take that pause and be responsive instead of being reactive. And after reading his work several times and listening to it, I've gotten better at doing it, both in my personal relationships, work, on LinkedIn, in any situations where, like, I can feel the fire of reactive, bubbling up, but I'm able to step back and pause. And my personal method, like I said, is questioning, the reactivity, that I want to deliver, questioning whether that's my ego or my true self. So that's been how I've been able to adopt it.
So basically, my next question was going to be that, I read The Power of Now, and what other resources would you look to? But it sounds to me that you maybe already answered that earlier when you said that interview with Oprah, to kind of go through that and listen to Eckhart talk about his book and what it means, maybe in a more personable setting, since Oprah is a miracle worker in terms of her interviews.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. And like I said, I don't know if I would be such a fan had I not listened to that first, because it made work so much more accessible.
Okay,
Yeah,
great. That's a good tip.
definitely that one. And for anybody who hasn't read 10% Happier, that was my introduction to mindfulness work, I think. But I really enjoyed that. He's a good storyteller too.
Well, on that note, I am a fan of Tara Brach, and in 10% Happier, Dan Harris actually is kind of critical of Tara Brach too. And I referenced one of this on one of our earlier blog posts, but there's a later interview of Tara Brach on Dan Harris's podcast, and they discuss that, and they have a real nice conversation about how they both learned from that. So I think for that reason, I'm probably like not wanting to go after Eckhart Tolle and say bad things about him, because like I got really mad at Dan Harris when I heard that. I was like, really? So I understand that there's a lot of differences with respect to how people react to teachers, and that every teacher isn't for everybody. So that's kind of why I wanted to do this. So on that note, like, if there is someone out there who finds a meditation teacher, reads a book, listens to some guided meditations or whatever, and they just don't like the teacher, what would you tell them to do if they were still interested in mindfulness?
Keep looking. Absolutely keep looking. You know what I would analogize it to is food. We all like different things. Just because you like fish and I don't, doesn't make the fish bad. And you don't stop eating. You keep searching for what works for you. And I mean, personally, it's been suggestions from friends. And of course, my husband is also a certified meditation teacher. And he's the one who first introduced me to Dan Harris and 10% Happier. And he's had, great practice for many years. But I would take suggestions from different people. Don't hold it against them if you don't like it. I mean, Claire, you and I can still be friends, even though you don't understand how wonderful Eckhart is. He's not for everyone, and that's fine. But I think with the amazing amount of literature and people who are available in the mindfulness realm right now, you will find people that you love. It's the same for yoga teachers with me. I love yoga, but if I don't have a teacher whose voice I like to hear, like if it's cringy, I'm going to have a terrible practice. The same with a meditation teacher, or if I don't like the way that they are describing the poses, or they're going too fast, whatever the case. I absolutely think it's worth the effort to find someone that you like and you enjoy. And it doesn't have to be just one person. You can find several. If there's one thing I could tell my younger self, have a mindfulness practice sooner. In fact, one of my goals is to start a yoga practice at my son's middle school, like once a week, 10 minutes, to start getting them familiar and used to mindfulness at a younger age, because I didn't learn about it until I was in my 40s.
Okay, so Talar, I really appreciate you talking to me today and explaining some things that I may have missed with respect to Eckhart. So thank you very much. So just so people can find you, if people do want to find you, where should they look?
You can find me most days at the LinkedIn coffee shop, which is just the platform, but it's kind of like a coffee shop. Talar Heculian Coursey. I also have a website, which is www.talaresq.com. And if you're in Salt Lake City, where I live, give me a shout. Just don't be creepy and follow me home or anything like that. That's where you can find me.
All right. Follow on LinkedIn. Do not follow home.
That's weird.
All right. Everyone, this is our interview blog with Talar, and I really appreciate you taking a watch and checking out the blog. So I hope we'll have some new stuff up next month, including we might have a guest post from Talar's husband, Bob. So stay tuned for that, and we will see you later. Bye.